Witness testimony began this morning in the Jason Jones murder trial. The case was moved from Cedar County to Dakota County District Court on a change of venue motion. KTV's Katie Koppel has a recap tonight of evidence heard on day one of the trial.
The murder trial of Jason Jones officially got underway Thursday morning with opening statements from the prosecution and defense. The 12-member jury and 5 alternates were escorted into the courtroom after 3 days of jury selection. Over the course of about an hour, prosecuting attorney Corey O'Brien laid out the basis of the state case. The murder of Michelle Ebling, the fire that occurred inside her home, the murders of Jean, Janet, and Dana Twyford, and the fire at their home, and a preview of the evidence the state will present. Jones' defense team, by comparison, had an opening statement of only 7 minutes. Attorney Matthew McDonald didn't contest that Jones killed the Twyfords in the early morning hours of August 4th, 2022. Instead, he claims Jason Jones had a mental breakdown.
All we're asking is all the evidence. They're going to put a lot of evidence on that you don't need to hear. We told you he killed the Twyfords. The issue is his mental state. Is somebody who has a mental breakdown guilty of premeditated murder?
McDonald previewed a note that Jones allegedly left his wife, Carrie Jones, the day before the crimes were committed. The defense doesn't deny that Jones should be convicted of a serious crime, instead looking to the jury to convict him of lesser charges. Jones is facing 4 counts of first-degree murder, which, if found guilty of even one of those charges, carries a sentence of life in prison or the death penalty. The first witness called by the state was Royce Farley, who called 911 in the early morning hours of August 4th after he and his roommate saw and heard what they described as an explosion at Ebling's home.
Okay, something exploded in the house or something like that, so I don't know. It could light fire again or something like that, so I don't know exactly what happened, but.
Farley stated that he saw Jason and his wife Carrie Jones, who is facing her own charges in the case, leaving Ebling's home next door when he and his roommate walked over.
We were talking to Mrs. Jones. She was right next to us. Kind of felt like she was trying to distract us, saying just odd things, like, not odd things, but it's just like over dramatic, like, what's going on? I just got home, this is crazy, even though she was already out there before us, so it just kind of felt weird.
Also taking the stand was Laurel volunteer firefighter Andrew Gauthier. Gauthier and his partner were the first to enter Ebling's home, making entry through a side door he described as unlocked and open 2 inches. Inside that door, they found Ebling on her side, unresponsive. Ebling's body was carried outside to the lawn, where EMTs took over her care, and it was determined she had died. When Cedar County Sheriff Chief Deputy Chad Clausen arrived, he found a bullet casing at the scene. When he then examined Ebling's body, authorities realized they were dealing with a homicide.
When I observed what appeared to be 2 bullet holes in her body.
Clausen said it was here they called in Nebraska State Patrol investigators to handle the case. It wasn't until later that morning when firefighters were called to the Twyford's house just blocks from Ebling's residence, where law enforcement discovered this was bigger than they thought. Testimony will resume at 9 a.m. Friday morning. In Dakota County, Nebraska, Katie Koppel, KTIV News 4.
And to note, Jones will not be present at the trial due to severe burn injuries he received on the night in question. KTIV will, of course, have continuing coverage from the courtroom throughout the murder trial.